when it's a small community like Clare, when something happens like that, it affects everyone, even the people that are in, or they are in the wine industry because they live in a wine growing region. Yeah. So it affects everyone. Even if the mood goes down, everyone feels it.
Welcome to Series 3 of Healthy Minds, Healthy Vines, a podcast proudly developed by the Wine Grape Council of South Australia and hosted by Callum McPherson and Nick Ryan. I'm Lisa Bonnier, CEO of the Council, and I'm delighted to bring you this series. The Wine Grape Council of South Australia represents our state's independent wine grape growers. We aim to provide growers with timely support and effective representation through advocacy, collaboration, and knowledge building. South Australia is home to just over half of Australia's vineyard area, and it's the diversity of our independent growers, their stories, challenges, and opportunities that shows just how important connection is in grape growing. In this new series, we bring you 10 unique conversations, sharing a rich mix of views, experiences, knowledge, and questions from across our grape and wine community. From personal journeys to practical insights, each episode is designed to spark thought, build connection, and support well-being in our industry. So wherever you're listening, in the vineyard, on the road, or at home, we invite you to tune in and be part of building healthy minds and healthy vines together.
Andrew, Kenny and Ben Castine are part of a new wave of Clare Valley growers, blending respect for tradition with a push for more sustainable and regenerative practices. Andrew runs Kenny Wine, a label focused on showcasing the best of single-vineyard fruit while caring for the land. Ben and his wife manage their own vineyard at Watervale alongside his work with EcoGrowers, helping farmers shift toward more resilient, environmentally friendly systems. Both have been recognised as young guns of wine for their forward thinking, showing you can farm for the future without losing what makes this region great. They face challenges like oversupply, water security, frost damage, and the mental toll of working in a tough climate, but they're driven by a belief in community and a healthier way forward for wine. Here's Ben and Andrew.
Ben, tell us about your family history in Clare.
I'm a fourth generation in Clare, and we've been living in Watervale for most of that time. Dad's dad was originally from Penhamscott Farm, so that was their original homestead back in the day, and then we moved to our current farm, Morella, and been farming. Yeah, Dad's been farming. Mum and Dad have been farming 40 years, 50 years before that. His dad, and before that, my great-grandpa, who was unfortunately a politician. So he was part of bringing the first electricity to the valley. A few stories about him as well. He's actually on one of the walls of Clare with Mr. Napstein, the old codgers. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so he's on there, and he did a bit of work for Clare, promoting Clare and things like that. But yeah, so that's basically where we're at, and I'm the fourth generation, and got a fifth generation, my daughter, and yeah,
Proper Clare.
Yeah,
Unlike me.
Yeah, not me.
And was that always going to be your path?
No. Oh, well, I don't know. It's interesting. Growing up, the adage was always keep your options open. So I wasn't forced into farming at any way. So I actually went off to study something completely different. Moved to Melbourne for a bit, and then opportunity came back to run the farm, and moved back in 2020.
What did you study?
I did an undergrad of psychology, and then went into neuropsychology, and then did some further study in Melbourne. Finished that in end of 2019, and just before COVID hit, moved out of Melbourne, and which is perfect timing, and started running the farm with my wife, Mum and Dad.
Is that useful information to have stored away for a farming career?
Well, if the farming career fails, I think, then there's a bit of a backup. No, I see it more as just a change of career, really. So it was really interesting at the time, but I've always loved farming, and sort of had a lot of interest in farming as I've been studying as well.
Mm.
So yeah, it's completely different, but there are some times that you sort of lean on it a bit with, I guess, organisational skills and things that you hope you've learned along the way that can help in farming. So yeah.
Oh, psychology is a booming industry now, mate.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I never wanted to be a clinical psych. I was more interested in the brain and how the brain worked and more of the neuroscience of it. So yeah, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating topic. There's a lot of opportunity for it, but it's a bit more niche as well. So there was an idea to try and do part-time, but since moving back, I've just loved farming and can't see myself going back into that role anytime soon.
And Kenny, you're from the Adelaide Hills originally.
Yeah. Born and bred, Stirling.
What's your backstory?
It's not a real nice origin. Like, it's not a cool origin story. I don't have any.
So you're not a superhero,
I'm not
mate.
I'm not a, yeah. Yeah, no, Marvel's not doing an offshoot of this one. I just grew up in the Adelaide Hills. I was working in construction when I finished school. Didn't do very well at school. And then one time my dad used to have like a little cellar. It was like, in the sock drawer where all the nice bottles are. And we were just going through and cataloguing it. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And kind of, got into red wines a little bit and then went over to Europe. That's why I did construction so that I could travel, and figured that the best way to travel was to get into wine. I'd worked in vineyards in the Adelaide Hills, sort of doing bits and pieces, but not really, I guess, understanding what I was doing. Always liked gardening for some reason. And then, after a trip from where I went over to Tuscany, I sort of saw the whole family scene where they were doing everything in one spot. You went there and you were eating their vegetables that they'd grown. At one point, they were pouring their grappa in our mouths. It was just cool. Yeah. And then, their house was there and their cellar was built onto the house. And I just really loved that.
It's a closed ecosystem.
Yeah. And everyone was just coming and going. It was just like, I've always loved that open door policy where, when your mates, when you're younger, they just pop up and they just come in, go to your pantry, I love that. So, that's kind of what I wanted to aspire to. And so I went to Adelaide Uni, graduated there in 2014. I graduated, but I went up to Clare in end of 2013. And while I was at uni, I sort of did bits and pieces in the vineyard in the hills. And then, a bit of work under Neil Pike and Steve Braglia out at Pikes. And I guess I love wine work, but I like being in the vineyard more. And I was talking to a mate about this. I think with wine work, it's very rigid. You kind of like set up a pump and then you pump an X amount of litres. But with vineyard work, let's say you're pruning, you're kind of going, all right, well, I'm setting this up for the future. And also I can leave at 4 if I need to. Yeah. Don't have to clean afterwards.
What brought you to Clare?
Riesling. Like, honestly, I loved drinking Riesling. Went through Germany and I loved the culture around harvest time and around Riesling in particular in the Pfalz. And, it was, I'd shared a couple of bottles with the guys at Howard's and some old Rieslings. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. How much it changes. And, I guess, when you drink young Riesling, you're thinking it's quite fresh and bright. And then how it develops in the bottle. And I had an old, I can't remember the producer, but it was an old Clare Valley, might have been like 8 years old, and sort of thought, well, after uni, this is where I want to go. And then I had a few mates that all went up at the same time. We had a share house. We had like an amazing vintage. It was so fun. 2014, we had Valentine's Day rain where, kind of we started picking and then we had all this rain on Valentine's Day and it just pushed everything back. So, you kind of had some fruit didn't get through, but like Cabernets and things in particular, which were later ripening, they just sort of just held on and ripened for longer and longer. And then you had this crazy difference of the Rieslings that were picked before the rain and the Rieslings that were picked afterwards. And this is my formative stage. And I'm just thinking like, man, this is cool. To see these wines 6 months later and go, well, that was picked before this rain event and that was picked after, and hell. So that was pretty cool. And I wanted to learn from Neil Pike. I thought he was, one of the best winemakers in Australia, and I still do. And
So does he.
yeah, so does he. Yeah.
Hi, Pikey.
Yeah.
Love you, Pikey.
He won't listen to this. But yeah, so after some time in Clare, I was travelling across.
How important is it for a young winemaker, hungry to learn, to find that kind of right mentorship?
Yeah, I probably didn't realise how important it really was until Neil left Pikes, and you really
stuck
need
with Steve.
Yeah.
Hi, Steve. Love you, Steve.
But it is really important because, wine is ever changing. It's global. The amount of personality that comes into wine as well, and it's such a social industry that, there's a lot of things that can change your perceptions and stuff. And you do just need a bit of a guide and a sounding board to sort of like take you along. And finding that mentor is right. And it's not easy. Like sometimes you get along with people, and I think you got to go in. When I started, I had no background in wine. So I was completely blank slate, and I was like, I just want to learn from the ground up. I want to learn the grapes all the way through.
What do you think was the impact of that, not having that background, like Ben's got coming into it like that? Do you think, how's that different?
I found it pretty easy. Not like I didn't know anyone. I had no preconceived ideas about people's wine styles. So I tasted everything, and I didn't really know. I mean, I still don't really know what a good vineyard looks like.
Apart from the Morella Vineyards one.
Yeah, apart from the Morella Vineyards and ones that are glyphosate free. I think it wasn't. I didn't find it challenging, but I did have mates from uni at the time, so that were all up in Clare. So that kind of gave me an in to see how other people were doing it. I went to Jim Barry, saw what they were doing, and went out to Adelina and saw what Cole was doing, and I didn't find it too difficult.
And I mean, that's always been a strength of, wine in general, but Australian wine in particular is, that willingness to, no one's doing anything behind, curtains or closed doors. It's, what we know, you can know too.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like over in Germany, they share equipment. So we'd take the destemmer for half a day and then clean it and then take it back to the neighbours and give it to so that it was completely open book.
Yeah.
Like you'd go in, oh, can I borrow your scales, or can I borrow, some acid or whatever. So I think, in parts like Germany and Australia are similar in that, but then there's some top producers that will be very behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Particularly in Germany, and then you like Burgundy, and
I think from the grape growing sort of community in Clare is really open as well.
Yeah.
Everyone's, no one's really a closed book. They want to share their experiences and things like that. And I think they probably, are very welcoming for new people coming in. I don't know whether you found that with your...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We bought our vineyard my wife and I bought our vineyard in 2020. I had no idea. Like I had an idea of how to go grow grapes, but not living on it and realising how much you've actually got to live it. You can't just go, oh, well, I'm going to close the gate for a couple of weeks. So I found it really, really helpful in Clare, pretty much from everyone. I haven't come across one roadblock where I've, and I do call a lot of people and ask a lot of opinions, but even just like borrowing equipment, asking someone, have you got any strainer posts? Ben's going to knock some strainer posts in for me, because I don't have a knocker on a big tractor. Just got an old Massey. But I found it extremely opening. I think because you can't hide what you're doing in your vineyard anyway. People will drive past and see, but also everybody's trying to grow better grapes because that's the climate we're in. We're trying to get the absolute pinnacle, and right now we're not in a tons game. Yeah. So everyone's kind of discussing and sharing, and that's probably one of the best parts of the industry.
Yeah, and I don't think that's just Clare specific as well. I think that, it happens a lot around Australia with the viticulture industry in particular. Everyone, everyone's just willing to share, which is pretty welcome, a welcome change from things like academia or something where it's quite competitive for grants and things like that in, previous sort of life. That's probably what hit me the most about moving home and just, that open book type thing. So
you talk about, willingness to share or, a willingness to teach. Is there a equivalent willingness to learn sort of generationally as well? I mean, there's some
absolutely,
pretty established old growers have done it their way for a very long time. Do they?
Yeah.
You find that there is openness to, learning new techniques or, new management tools that you might, a younger generation might bring?
I think, definitely. But I think there's, it's easy to forget that it's probably been done in some form or another earlier on.
Yep.
So, a lot of the regenerative models of viticulture, some people have been doing that in some capacity, and it's just about bringing that and maybe adapting it to current practices. So I think it's important to recognise that it probably has been done in some form in the past, and I think that happens with all agriculture. But then trying to put, your own sort of slant on it in a way by saying what worked in the past, what didn't work in the past, what can we do differently that might be a bit more sustainable in terms of actually implementing those practices.
Yeah, it's not reinventing the wheel. I mean, look, you got to look at grapes or growing grapes like a long-term game. It's got its peaks and troughs, and I think if you look back at regenerative agriculture, it's just what they were doing. We talk about like soft pruning, which is being really mindful of how you're pruning and what it is going to impact the vine, in the future, because every cut essentially affects that vine because that vine just wants to grow up.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Oliver over in Germany, and he's saying, they just brought back the traditional pruners because in Romania, that's all that all the Romanians would come across, and that was just how they always pruned because that's just how they were always been taught. So they didn't have to try and say to them, hey, look, you need to change your pruning style.
Yeah.
So like Ben said, it's just sort of improving a little bit on the wheel, but not
reinventing.
And getting the methods out there as well.
I
think, and really trying to fly the flag for the benefits of it. I think in Clare, but all around South Australia, there's, obviously threats of climate change and climate sort of changing they're going to be drier. We're going to get rain at the wrong time. So when you were talking about a February, Valentine's Day rain, I was just thinking to myself, the growers probably wouldn't have loved that as much. But there is going to be that wider distribution of rainfall as well, which is going to impact on growing. So it's really trying to bring in those techniques that maybe have been there in the past to try and increase resilience in the vineyard, because that's probably the end goal for me, particularly, to try and just smooth out the peaks and troughs of a climate through more even grape growing if we can.
How do you go about getting that message out there?
I think I haven't probably been a big proponent of trying to get it out there yet because, you sort of only been back 5 years and you feel like the bit of the imposter syndrome where you haven't quite established it in your own vineyard yet to then go to other people and say, this is what we've done and this is what works. But I think, those programs like EcoVineyards are a good way to try and share knowledge about regenerative viticulture. And then there's been proponents around for years of sustainable agriculture or viticulture in particular. So you just have to look at them and really take examples from them and then build on that as well.
Tell us a bit about what you're doing in your own vineyard.
As I said, we're really early on. So, it's when I came home, we were definitely conventionally managed. So a lot of herbicide use and things like that. I got to a point in the first couple of years where we were just sort of nuking out the undervine, and then we were getting wireweed, which is, a pretty hard weed to knock out. And that was just getting harder and harder to kill. And I thought, we're creating the perfect environment for that weed to thrive. So let's try and do something different. So we've moved towards a lot of undervine straw mulching just in the interim to try and preserve moisture, try and improve soil health, trying to give the vines a break from that herbicide cycle. And then the end goal is to move towards a completely perennial mid-vine and undervine system. So we're planting native grasses in the mid-row. So 2 years ago, we planted 1.5 hectares of wallaby grasses and different mixes of grasses. It's a bit of a mess at the moment, but I think regenerative agriculture can be messy in that transition period. And we were sort of talking about before about the look of well-manicured vineyards, very much sort of probably the older style of viticulture isn't necessarily the healthiest style. And hopefully we can move towards a bit more of a messier model where
it says a lot
more
about
health
the work
in the
that
vineyard.
needs to be done when you're having to plant the grasses that should be naturally occurring.
Yeah, exactly. Pre settlement and things like that. So they're notoriously hard to establish. Once they're established, they're really hardy, being Australian natives. But it's getting to that stage, which is really tricky, and then trying to provide a model for other people to say, this is what we did, this is how much it cost. These were the challenges. These are the methods we used, and trying to see that it is actually possible.
So you got that proof of concept first.
Yeah.
Are there economies of scale and working collectively if you can get other people, or is it a matter of you do your own thing for a while and hopefully others follow? But is it the value in trying to get everyone on the same train for a bit?
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever get anyone on the same trail. And I mean,
what in terms of viticultural practices? Within a region, or I think definitely. So the way we harvest native seed is using a brush harvester, and I've chatted to a few others that are doing a similar thing, trying to split that cost across a few growers, and then you borrow that. So similar to the Germany model that you were talking about, you share equipment, you share ideas, and then you're sharing the cost, right, of trying to establish something that's quite expensive initially to establish. So
because there's never been a problem within regions of getting winemakers to come together and drink a whole lot of fancy booze and go, that's making us better winemakers because we're drinking all this Burgundy and Barolo. But
it's tough
at a grower level. Is enough of that happening?
Well, my vineyard's so small that it would definitely. There's a lot of things that I don't do because I don't have the equipment. There's no way that I can justify it. Justify it. I like the idea of it a little. Maybe we should chat about
not a cooperative, but just sharing
a cooperative.
a non-official cooperative. Yeah.
Maybe another thing to stick on our bottle, another certification,
another gold label.
Get more and more on there.
Do you think it can be cost effective once you've gone through that establishment phase?
Yeah, it's hard. I think the way you measure cost effectiveness probably needs to be done over 10, 15, 20 years time, which is hard because we're not running rigorous randomized control trials on the vineyard. We're sort of just doing it anecdotally. I should do it more rigorously, but it's kind of hard when, everyone's time poor and trying to do a methodology like that's pretty tricky. But I think in terms of the benefits to the whole ecosystem, so the health of the vines, the health of the soil, bringing back the good bugs, for example, that predate on the bad bugs that we don't want in the vineyard. So eliminating insecticide use, eliminating a lot of herbicide use. So I think those sort of things you can measure quite well because they're a per pass process. So you've got a dollar value of that you can eliminate. But I think the longer term effects on vine resilience and soil health they're quite hard to measure because they're over quite a long period of time.
Do you feel better about the way you're doing things now?
Yeah, and as I said, I'm really early on, and we've had a lot of failures. A lot of things that didn't work as well as I thought I did, but that was probably more poor preparation from my behalf. But I think I'm happier that we're reducing unnecessary operations, I guess, and one of those is reducing the amount of herbicide we use. We still use herbicide, but we're using less of it. And then also the reevaluation of what's a weed in the vineyard and versus does it necessarily have to be nuked because it's there? Is it actually doing that much damage, or does it just look ugly? So you want to nuke it, or you want to cultivate it out?
Can you only learn from experience and making mistakes and realizing, or can you learn this from somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of studies out there, but agriculture is a bit tricky because a lot of people say, well, that applies in that situation or that microclimate, but doesn't apply in others. So, which I think is completely fair enough. So you can take the principles, but if you don't apply it to your own microclimate or your own situation, you're never going to really know whether it's worked or hasn't worked.
Kenny, what have you been learning since starting Kenny Wine?
There's a lot more that goes into running your own business.
Yeah.
Mate, it's not all glory.
It's not all Barolos.
Yeah, it's not all glory and gains. I think it becomes all encompassing. When we started the business, it was a bit of fun, and it was just, selling wine to our mates and our families and things like that. Thought the vineyard would I kind of had the idea. The vineyard's small enough; it's 1.5 hectares. So I had the idea that it would just be a sort of offshoot of our garden. Like I love growing veggies, so I was like, I'll
pretty romantic, isn't it, that view?
Yeah,
just a big garden.
It's this beauty, yeah. And you're like, wow, this takes a long time.
Lambs probably.
Yeah.
Just butterflies on
talking about miniature goats, under vine, and
yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot. Like, I don't think. I think one of the biggest things that we lack, these first generation wine growers, and it's just experience. Like everybody's done it. Everybody's been through some form of what you're going through. You just need to find the right person to ask about it.
Have you had that imposter syndrome?
Oh, hell yeah. I have that all the time. I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yep.
I could have turned around the North-South connector today.
Yeah, stitch me up.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Ben. I got COVID. Got to go.
What do you do with that when when that pops up and there's something else you don't know how to do, or you've made another mistake and you don't go down that rabbit hole of, I shouldn't be here in the first place?
Oh, look, I guess if it's making me uncomfortable, I generally do it.
It's a good policy.
Good Band-Aid off.
It's taken me a while to get there, but yeah, I guess if I think preparation's key, but if I feel strongly enough about something, I'll just end up doing it no matter what, and no matter what people say. But yeah, it does take a while to get there. Sure.
And what about when nature throws you curveballs?
Yeah, that sucks.
Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you had to face in the early days of Kenny Wines.
Yeah, so we bought a vineyard in a frosty area, thinking we would be the exception.
It's not going to happen to us.
Yeah, it's
an extension of our garden.
Yeah, exactly.
The lambs frolicking around, the butterflies on our noses.
I said, when we looked at the vineyard, it was I can't remember what it was. It might have been like August. It would have been about August when we looked at it, and you don't think about frosts in the start of August. You start to think about them at the end. But we got frosted 3 times in 5 years, with one absolutely decimating the crop, and that was a bitter pill to swallow, because we kind of felt like so when we took over, we threw out all we got rid of herbicide 100%. We got rid of all insecticides. We moved away from systemic fungicide, and we're on that pathway to, I guess, sort of a holistic approach, a permaculture approach, essentially. And we thought we're really, we're building this resilient system, and we're building this, we're going to be all right no matter what. And then
you're doing the right thing by Mother Nature.
Yeah. We got smashed by frost, and when you kind of go to work and you see, so it was about 7 a.m. You kind of could see, all right, there's still ice on all the vines, and then you kind of go to work and you see, that part of the valley's been hit, and they look all right, and then you get to work, and about 4 o'clock, I think, for some reason, me and Vic ended up fishing about the same time that day, and one of my mates had rang me and said, "Have you been past?" Like, he'd gone past the vineyard, and I said, "Nah," because over the day they'll just dry out. It looks like someone's just burnt them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we both got home at the same time and both got out into the vineyard and just broke down. It was it was just sort of the kind of went like, what's the point, because we'd spent so much time on it. So we went away for 2 weeks, and then we come back and went, oh well,
it's still bugging.
Still looks terrible. So we just didn't have anyone in the vineyard for a little bit. And didn't do any sort of tastings in our vineyard, and generally only when it's looking good.
Yeah. But this is trying to establish your own label, your own business. You're already getting a little attention for the wines, and then bang, and then bang again.
Yeah. I mean, it was just like, you kind of had this thought, it's sort of never ending, but there was definitely positives that come out of it. We started working with Ben straight away.
Is that a positive, or?
It's a big deal.
Regret it now.
Yeah. No, we kind of, I guess we got a lot of support. The Valley just rallied like around everyone. And we had people outside of region, like, we didn't post about it or anything, but it gets around. And we had people saying, hey, mate, if you need a ton of grapes, like, all good. Like, So, we sort of everyone just got around us, and we just, kept on going. And I think we'll still get frosted, but like, kind of know now what to do.
Go away for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Go on holiday.
How important is it sort of, regional organisation around events like that? I know, when it did happen in Clare, there's big meeting at General Store in Watervale. More people turning out to that meeting than any regional association meeting ever before, because suddenly everyone went, we're all in this together. We need to do something.
Well, that was it. Like, everybody felt like we all had a common cause. We all felt it. Even the people that didn't get frosted would still be feeling it.
Yeah.
And when it's a small community like Clare, when something happens like that, it affects everyone, even the people that are in the wine industry, because they live in a wine growing region. Yeah. So it affects everyone. Even if the mood goes down, everyone feels it. So I think, like, with the turnout there, we kind of all just wanted to have the right voice, the same voice, and go forward with the same message. Hey, look, frost doesn't, impact quality. It impacts volume.
Yeah.
It just means you're not going to get the volume there. So, we kind of went out there with the, everyone was together on it. And at the end, if there's anything good that came out of it, is that. Ask me again if it happens again this year. See how I feel. But like, there's a lot of people have kind of come to change their practices, and like Ben was saying before, what works in one region doesn't necessarily work in another, and it's because of those climatic factors of your region. So everyone kind of shares what works and what doesn't. There's a few people that had sprinkler systems that worked really well, and they were more than open for people to come in the vineyard and have a look at how they work and things like that. So, all in all,
I think it was that collaborative. I think everyone that came that got heavily frosted knew there wasn't much you could do about it that season, really. But it was more about coming together and creating a plan that this is this season, but we've got to talk about the image of Clare going forward as well. So I think shifting from that present sort of focus to what are we going to do about this, future planning, that sort of stuff was probably hugely productive, I think, in terms of changing the mindset from being pretty down to how we're going to do this and forward planning. So.
What's the impact of people being able to see it as a collective and a community and not just isolated?
Well, if you isolate, you're just going to sit there and stew on it, which is 100% what happens. You'll just sit there and look and go, oh, well, woe is me. This is the worst thing that's ever happened, and there's nothing I can do with it. And I'm the only one feeling this. But then, you go out to this meeting at the general store and all the growers are the same. Everyone's saying, oh, we've had frost like this before. I think there was a comment on the black frost. I can't remember when it was, which was quite similar. This was probably worse, but it was quite similar. And you kind of go, well, everyone bounced back. Like, it is what it is. That's the game we play. Like, we're governed by nature. If nature doesn't want any grapes that year, we're not making them. You're not gonna. What are you gonna do? So yeah, you just gotta you gotta come away and lose a bit of control.
Except that, loss of control, isn't it?
It's that.
And Dad always said there's no point worrying about things that you can't control.
And
I think that's probably the best thing in agriculture. It's easy to say, but hard to actually put into practice.
Yeah. Easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But after that initial shock of, drought or frost, then you can try and move towards a more, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to potentially mean that we can do something in the vineyard that'll make it more resilient in the future?
At least you don't have to worry about flood mitigation.
Definitely not in Clare.
That's it.
What have you been able to do for Kenny's?
Well, just I think, if as Kenny said, if anything came out of it, it was working together from it. Kenny and Vic were looking for some Watervale Riesling and some Grenache, and it worked really well. You got to think about what motivates you as a grower, and I'm definitely motivated by seeing the product go to completion and getting honest feedback about it and that sort of stuff. There's nothing that demotivates me more than just dropping the grapes off at the winery and then job's done. And we've sort of had a few longer term wineries that have been like that, and we're trying to either ask for more feedback, or if it's a pretty closed loop, then we move away from them more towards winemakers that want to work with you long term and that give you feedback, that tell you if it's okay, tell you if it's bad. If you don't have any feedback on it, then I think that's where motivation can really drop. And Kenny's been good at doing that. So it's been great from that point of view. Obviously a terrible event with the frost, but looking back at it, it's been a good collaboration.
Yeah, I think it's always been a great thing for a grape grower community. Wineries that will, keep parcels separate and push them, the whole way through, and then be able to get growers together and go, well, that's yours, and that's how it's ended up. And then, well, why am I getting paid B grade prices? Well, here's a bottle of A grade next to it, and talk to them about what they're doing to get to their.
And I think that's the hesitation, right, with a lot of wineries not giving any feedback, because they think, the grower's going to just go and try and hike the price up. But I think it's more about a long-term collaboration.
Yeah.
And building that trust that, that's not going to happen. Although I did accidentally put too much on the grapes this year, and Kenny rang me and said, is it going to go up every year? Sorry, mate, that was a typo. I'm not going to hike the prices up here without talking about it. So
that's where we could get into it and it would take a long time, but that scaling like B grade, A grade, it doesn't really work, I don't think. I think, you need to have that connection to the grapes that you're growing.
Our relationship will be this. And
and you need to go, well, why is it like this? Like, you can't get to a point where it's, for the grower at the end product, when they're at the grape stage, you can't get to that point and then say, oh, well, you didn't. Why is it like this? What's going on here? You need to have had.
Yeah, I've heard stories of it happening though.
Oh, absolutely. It does happen.
Yeah, you owe us this amount of money because what we paid for as A grade ended up being what we consider C grade wine. The grower, that's not my problem.
Yeah. But we're the one telling you that, and we're the one calling the shots. We're the one,
So I think moving towards that collaborative sort of model is how I want to go, and I'm sure it's how Kenny wants to go as well. Yeah, moving away from just the great divide between growers and winemakers. And it's probably a bit naive in a way, or idealistic, but I think if we're going to survive with changing wine consumer habits and things like that, we need to have a really close collaboration with winemakers.
Goes beyond the weighbridge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, in the spaces that we play in, like that, people want that story. They want to know about the connection behind the bottle. They're not just going to pick it on a pretty label or a score.
Yeah.
They want to know a story behind it. And, if you're just getting grapes from everywhere and, you don't have a connection to that area, then you're probably not as confident in your wine style as well. You know what I mean? Like, I can bring grapes in that I know I've had a hand in the whole time. Go, oh, yeah, excellent.
Yeah, and we had Kerry Thompson here last season, and that relationship she has with even a bunny peg leaders. That's such a strong and it's almost familial.
Yeah.
And, that's, the wine is always better because of the strength of that relationship and the way those guys work together.
Yeah.
Everyone banding together through tough times. Do you find that the mental health conversation emerges much through that, or is it talking about the brass tacks of frost and less so about the emotional side, or have you found that the community is more open to talking about how they're going mentally?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't want to say it's a generational thing because I think younger people also have a hesitancy to bring it up as well at some degree. I think there's been good work done by a lot of people to try and bring it to the forefront and normalise conversations about mental health. But it's a lot easier to focus on the problem and how to fix it than how I guess you're dealing with that emotionally. So if someone's feeling a bit uncomfortable, they're probably more likely to just focus on that rather than open up about, how it's actually affecting them. And I think that happens quite a lot in agriculture. We try and be a bit stoic and park that side of it and just go, yeah, this happened, and we just have to move on without acknowledging the impact as well.
Is that changing or improving at all?
I think it probably is. Yeah. I don't know what do you think it's much of muchness?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. I think people are more comfortable talking about mental health, obviously.
Do you guys talk about it? Like when you're going through those times and a lot of the community is with you, or maybe it's for something else, do you find you talk about it in your own lives?
In your own circles or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, it depends on the circles, I think. And I think that conversation is more inner circle based, but maybe we need to get to a point where it's, more of a general conversation with community members and acquaintances and things like that probably makes it a bit more normalised. So definitely within close circles, absolutely at this stage.
And do you think I know it's hard to say, but do you think that's the case for most people, that they would be speaking out about it within their circle? Or you think there's still a lot of people who just wouldn't say anything and just keep it purely to themselves?
Hope not.
Yeah. I mean, there are, mental health in the country is quite poor. And I think there probably are a few that are holding it in. And yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one. It's a hard one to say. I'd hope that it starts becoming a bit more normalised. And I think one way is through community organisations to sort of bring awareness to it, but also sporting clubs are a big one as well, which I think I've seen happen a bit more, which is encouraging. But there's
like
always
mental health training at sporting clubs and that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, and mental health awareness and things like that, and getting people in to sort of chat about it and actually having people listen, not just sort of glaze over as well. So I think it's moving in the right direction, but as with every sort of health system, it's probably underfunded a fair bit, and yeah, it's a tricky one to sort of see how to fix that problem.
What about you, Kenny? When you were getting smashed with frost, were you speaking up much, or just sort of yelling at the sky?
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I've got my network that I've kind of built around me that I go to when I'm struggling. There'd be a few people that wouldn't be surprised to hear that I do struggle every now and then. But I was pretty open with it. Like, I definitely had a couple of people sort of talking me through it. And I think, once again, it's just who you're comfortable with and who you're keen to talk to, really.
Is that just calling a mate for you?
Yeah. I mean, my wife's great. She understands everything. Calling a mate. I mean, I've got a lot of mates that I'm still really close with since high school that have been through, a few incidents like with me, and sort of we've kind of all come out. And I think, you've got some mates that takes a couple beers and then they'll spill their guts, and a few that sort of keep it are pretty open. The best thing I would say is just finding somebody who you can, but not just unloading constantly. It's got to be give and take. You don't want to just have someone like, I don't want to come home and unload on my wife every day about, oh yeah, I've got frosted again. This is shit. This is bad.
Castine hiking up the
Yeah,
frosted grapes.
Benny's done this. I mean, even during harvest, like when times are tough and you're not sleeping, you kind of feel like you got the weight of the world on your shoulders, but really you're making wine and it's actually a pretty fun time.
Yeah.
I'll be chatting to Benny about it and say, oh yeah, no, I'm feeling a bit worried about this and about, really things that don't matter. You just
how important is it to be able to just take that one step back and go, hang on.
Perspective. Yeah.
Just breathe out.
Yeah. But the only way you can get perspective is sharing it and talking to someone else who's doing it as well.
Yeah.
That helps you see it. You step back from it and say, oh, actually, it's not that bad, or I can do this and this and improve. The danger is if you never share it and it just, the voice just gets worse in your own head and doesn't go anywhere good. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's a tendency to, to say, I can fix this myself. But that invariably, isn't that effective sometimes as well. I guess having that awareness to be able to see your triggers and go, oh yes, I'm feeling like this, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling, down. What's driving it? What can I do about it as well? And that just might take, someone in the community to just go, hey, you're right. You seemed a bit off. I've had people say that to me before, and it sort of clicks you into a mode of thinking that, maybe I need to check in and.
And do you say, yeah, I'm fine, and then think about it later, or?
Oh, it's sort of that unloading thing that you really, it's a bit hard because you don't want to tell everyone your life story, do you? But at the same time, you want to be open as well. So it's just finding that balance about sort of saying, oh yeah.
Yeah, that prevents us because like you said, Kenny, you're afraid of being someone who dumps all their problems and you think, well, everyone's got problems, so why should I be voicing mine? Everyone else is handling their own thing.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to temper that with the capacity to talk when it's really necessary. But we're not saying, constantly complain about every single fucking thing that's happening, right? Because it's going to drive everyone mad and no one's going to want to talk to you. But don't take that so far that you can't talk about anything when actually there is something going on that you do need to talk about.
I think there's a difference between some people that ask how you're going, but are just asking that because that's a conversational thing. But then people that are asking it because they actually genuinely, are worried. And I think with that second group, you can sort of expand a bit more on challenges and things like that. And it's just building that network that you can do that, I think, as well.
What about you, Nick? How do you go with this, mate?
I'm a regular dumper.
That was my question.
No, look, I'm again just thinking. There's sorts of all sorts of subtle ways. I was at a long lunch a couple of weeks ago. A couple of mates whose marriages have all keeled over, and so a bunch of us all went to lunch and got around each other in their own, our own particular way, without having to be, particularly overt about it. But just go, look, we're all here, arms around you. I thought it was interesting that the guy that pulled the lunch together chose the theme of the wines for the day, which were every wine was made by a divorced winemaker. So there's that way, that way that you can just go, some of that bleak sort of humour helps sometimes as well. And waited for the two guys who were, were having lunch in there, to put arms around them and wait for them to click that all the wines were connected by that common theme, and got a laugh out of them.
Could you taste it?
Could you taste the marital anguish in these wines? No, some bloody nice wines.
Yeah.
What else keeps you up at night?
I mean, a lot of things keep me up at night. Watching the news keeps me up at night, but I generally don't watch
Turn that off.
Anymore. Yeah. I like to problem solve, and there's just things you can't solve. So at the moment, what keeps me up at night is just, before we started our own business, what was keeping me up at night was working, but making sure, I'm going to do this tomorrow, just trying to be one step ahead. And that's not exactly very present. Now it's sort of, worried about the current sales climate. We're having a baby in a month, So we're
That'll
kind of
keep you up at night.
yeah, that'll keep me up at night. I'm
whether
not-
you like it or not.
I'm not too upset when I get those 2 a.m. scaries now because I'm like, well, I'm going to be up at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
for
Good practice.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, oh, here we go.
Are you the
But it-
ruminator that can't get back to sleep
Yeah,
for a
so
couple of hours and
I'll for some reason it's always worse in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Like the tiniest issues that never seem like a problem during the day.
Yeah.
And I'll generally go over every conversation about 10 times, make sure, was that right? Yeah.
No.
What was that facial expression?
But that is, we talk a lot through this podcast that, there's challenges in growing wine, there's challenges in making wine, but the hardest part of it all in this
Selling.
business is selling the wine.
we were talking about that before.
When you create your own business, there's a whole new set of, traps ready to catch you. How do you navigate through that in the early days of setting your own business up?
I made so many mistakes. Even where you just think, oh, well, this is the price that the bottle is and this is it. And then you take it out to market and say, well, actually, this is where it needs to sit. And this is, what do you mean? This is just the price of it.
But I need it under this price. List it at this price, and I would pour it at this price. And
I think also, it's a good thing that people are being more health conscious, and that's driving, lower alcohol sales in general. But it's about changing that story of wine, and not about drinking it just to go out and get boosted. Like it's drinking it to sit around and have a nice meal or catch up with old mates and talk a story. Maybe the wine holds some sort of story.
yeah,
It becomes part of, it becomes part of that scene, that culture around the area. I guess that's the important thing about wine.
Yeah.
And if we can get that right, then, and there is no right way to do it, but if we can get that right and tell the right stories and kind of connect with people that way, then we'll be fine.
yeah. There's so much more in a bottle of wine than the 12.5% of it that's alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. That's, yeah.
And I think a lot's been
It's
said
good.
about
You like that?
premiutisation, but it's a hard slog, I think, in practice as well, to get to that point, and whether that is the end goal for the industry. I think the current trends are less and better quality, but how do we actually get there pragmatically as well? How do we not go broke getting there? That's going to be a really big challenge, I think. And I'm by no means a winemaker at all, but thinking about diversified products and things like that as well within the wine range, that might be fit in that category a bit more as well, or a completely new category. I don't know whether I should bring up the no-low. Is that a dirty word? Or?
Oh, we're talking about that in our next one anyway, so
Yeah.
might as well talk about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a grower, so I don't sort of have much to do with obviously the winemaking side of it, apart from working with winemakers. But it's funny bringing up no-low and seeing people's reaction to it. And is it seen as a diversification of someone's wine portfolio, or is it still wine? I don't know. It's a conversation I've been trying to have with people, but it's pretty controversial, which is interesting.
It's controversial in the way that I think of all the facsimile alcoholic beverages, wine is the one that, to change it from just grape juice, you've got to elevate it to wine, and then you've got to strip its soul out to get it back to a no alcohol product. Whereas you can build a non-alc beer from the ground up, or some
Beer's
of these.
pretty close too.
Yeah, look, and there's plenty of good non-alcoholic beer around. I'm yet to see a really successful non-alcoholic wine, because you're really ripping its sort of an essence out of it, really, and it's not simply an alcohol extraction thing, but there's all sorts of things that happen. So I think that's something that needs to be considered. But I just still think a better strategy is drink
Less and
less,
quality.
but drink quality.
Yeah.
I did once convince a bouncer, a friend and I convinced a bouncer who wasn't going to let us into a place because we may have had too much to drink, that we would only drink Cabernet Riesling for the rest of the evening.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I said, well, it's 9.5% alcohol. And he went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So actually let us in.
Did you drink the Cabernet? Or?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Why wouldn't you? It's a delicious thing to drink at the end of a big day. So that worked.
Well, there's a saying in Germany. It's like, oh, maybe we'll just have a cabernet because we need to sober up.
Yeah.
What's some of the general attitudes towards that?
No low.
Yeah.
Oh, from what I've seen, winemakers are probably pretty resistant to it because they don't necessarily see it as their passion.
No, but you can see
yeah.
where a grower has a different perspective on it because it's still, production of grapes and
absolutely. And they're doing a bit in New Zealand about growing grapes for less alcohol as well. So canopy manipulations, things like that actually result in ripe grapes at a lower sugar levels and things like that. So
I'd rather, glass of mineral water with a wedge of lemon and a wedge of lime in it rather than something pretending to be Watervale Riesling that's not.
Yeah. It's, I don't know whether winemakers see, that wine is their product and then they've got a diversified product that is just keeping up with market trends that's no low. I'm not sure. It's going to be interesting to see where the market goes.
How well has it been doing?
Not very well.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think Nick was saying that, something strips out that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm on the committee at the Royal Adelaide Wine Show, and we had a sponsors meeting a couple of meetings ago. The sponsorship manager from the society comes in and says, "Got all the sponsors for the trophies lined up for this year's show except one. I'm just struggling to find a sponsor for the no low category." Probably don't have to work too hard on that. Got a little way off before we'll be giving trophies out. I think we will look at what people are doing there. Treasury made a big investment in it. It's a thing, and it's gonna be an important part of the next 10 years of the market, I think. But there's a lot of work to be done.
And it depends on what, if we talk about sort of the harm minimisation approach to alcohol, and what's a more effective strategy, buying good quality wine and drinking less of it, or buying no low and drinking similar amounts. I don't know what the best strategy is.
Yeah, I think that less is more approach makes sense, because if you're buying good quality wine and you're associating it with an experience and connection, that's not really just about getting wrecked on whatever you can. Is it?
And that's never really been wine's purpose. Wine's purpose has always been, as a gastronomic beverage, as an experiential thing, as something that you share. We all know that.
Yeah, not the red bears.
The great joy in a bottle of wine is sharing it with someone else. No seems to be the trickiest part of this, equation. But is there an opportunity to work on the low side of that? What do we call it? It's not an anagram. It's just a contraction. But if we say no for now, what is there to be done in the low space?
Like great wines of Germany, the cabernets, they were the earliest picked, and because they had struggles getting them ripe, they are naturally lower in alcohol, but they also stop the ferment a little bit earlier, so there's a little bit of sugar there, and sugar does the same thing as alcohol. It provides body, it provides richness, and a perceived sweetness. So, there's a great scope for low alcohol, probably sitting around 8% alcohol, 9% alcohol, but it's a lot harder to go from 12.5 to 0 in terms of wine than it is for beer to go from 5 to 0. And so there's definitely a space if people wanted to drink lower alcohol. There's definitely that space.
Yeah. And I think there are, again, certain styles and maybe varieties that is a pathway, but I'm not sure we're going to be getting, 8% Cabernet.
No, it doesn't work.
Getting any pleasure from, 8% Cabernet around the place. But there are opportunities if, think it through.
Yeah.
And would that just mean that people just drink the whole bottle instead? Because,
exactly. So they're still going to drink the.
Yeah. And I guess if it's about being health conscious and then, that the lower alcohol wines have got more sugar in them.
Yeah.
Is that going to put people off for that?
It's a tricky one.
Just shut up and drink it.
Depends what you're eating it with.
Yeah. I'm probably not the only person here that's put a bottle of Cabernet into a stubby holder.
Long neck.
Again, to talk about generational grape growing and winemaking, in Clare, as an example of someone who's continuing a long tradition and someone who might be soon maybe starting one.
No pressure on.
What is the future for viticulture and winemaking in the Clare Valley?
I guess from I come from a position of like relatively, well, tiny production, I guess, when push comes to shove. And so I guess for me, it's about changing the style of wine and the perception around those wines to fit with the changing climate, rather than ripping out this variety and planting something else. If you've got a patch of land, definitely plant something, and you want to plant something that is climate, appropriate. But if let's say like Riesling, for example, it loves water, and we're doing that so we get really big canopies and we get less sunlight. Probably just need to have a think about, well, if we don't have the water, what will the wines look like?
Yeah.
And is that a bad thing? No. Like, it just shows what a dry vintage looks like. And we need to accept that, and we need to accept that this vintage variation, that's the beauty of wine. So it's about that sort of perception change on wines, on varieties and styles, rather than just, throwing out all right, well, this doesn't grow well here. And, just slowly changing that style. But yeah, it'd be up to my child whether they want to, they might want to plant some weird AI grape in the future. Who knows?
Yeah, it's a bit hard to predict that.
Yeah. I think it's similar thing, working with what you've got, building resilience in the vineyard in the sort of short to medium term as well. Trying to move towards higher quality slowly. If your workhorses are still those lower quality ones, at the end of the day, you need to be financially viable as well. So you need a bit of both, but trying to move towards higher quality as a greater proportion of your vineyard, working with winemakers that want to do that as well. I think that's really important, because I think, it's at the end of the day, if we are moving away from these consumer patterns of behaviour, then we have to move the vineyards as well. It's just about finding a way to do that as well. And maybe there is some way to diversify in the vineyard as well. So with the native seed in the mid-row, if we're not doing any more, we can actually sell that seed as well. So that produces an alternative income in the vineyard as well from an otherwise sort of income producing part of the vineyard, which is the undervine.
Yeah.
So thinking outside the box, diversifying, trying to change viticultural practices in light of challenges that we're facing, I think.
Yeah, you still got to do it at a competitive price
Well,
in a cost of living crisis. So.
Absolutely. And you, there's no point saying, I'm going to completely change the whole thing overnight, because it's just not tenable.
Vineyards turn around as easily as rudderless boats.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You've got to work with what you've got and make it better.
Yeah.
Thanks, boys.
Easy.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Head to the Wine Grape Council of South Australia website for links and further resources. This is part of a bigger conversation, so feel free to share this podcast with your mates and look after yourselves. Cheers.